I guess they put these up on Facebook, is that correct?
Yes,
it's up on Facebook? So if you don't get enough of me during the week, you can watch. Alan told me not to move around too much. Otherwise it's going to look like Blair Witch Shaky Cam. Hey, we're in church? I suppose that would be a bad thing. I don't know. So, Pastor Dan has been doing a series called The Faith of Faith and Life and Faith. And there's not a better example of that than looking at the life of King David. But I'm going to look at King David. I'm sort of going to jump in the middle of this series here. We're going to talk about betrayal this morning, or how to respond to betrayal, or even more specifically, how to respond in a godly way to betrayal. Now, we'll just take a quick check. Anybody in this room ever feel like they've been betrayed? Yeah. How did you respond? Well or not so well? Well, we're going to kind of take a look at that. Now, as Pastor Dan has been preaching, he's been talking about David, and David was indeed a great king. He was a great king over the nation of Israel. But to really understand what made David so great, you have to kind of understand that he was Israel's second king. We have to look at the first king as sort of a comparison, as sort of a contrast, because Saul and David stand very much in contrast to each other. They stand in contrast as a failure and as a success of becoming all that God wanted them to be. You know, the story of Israel having a king is sort of the classic story of be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. Right? You know what I'm talking about? Because here God had taken this group of people, the Israelites, and he delivers them from the hand of Egypt. And he brings them over to the promised land. He says, I'm going to take you into the promised land, and when you go there, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make you a special people. I'm going to make you a unique people. I'm going to make you different from everyone else. He has huge books of the Bible, all devoted to, here's how I'm going to make you different from everybody else. And when you go into this land, you're not going to be like the Egyptians. You're not going to be like all these other people. I'm going to make you special. I want you to be different. And by the time we get to Saul and David's lifetimes, here we have the Israelites going, we'd like a king. Well, why would you like a king? Well, we want to be like everybody else and have a king. They had changed from the unique calling they had to, well, we just want to be like everyone else. And God tried to talk them out of it. He's like, well, if I give you a king, you're not going to like it. Because, if you have a king, there's taxes to pay for things kings want. And he's going to take the young men of your tribes, and he's going to drop them off to war. And you guys are going to be sad. He's going to lord it over you. You're not going to like having a king. And they're like, yeah, but we want one. And God allowed it, because that's the way God is. God doesn't force obedience upon us. He allows us to make our own mistakes. And he's like, well, hopefully they'll learn from them. Let's find out. And so God says, all right, I'll give you a king. And God sends Samuel, his prophet, off to the tribe of Benjamin. Now, the tribe of Benjamin was the smallest tribe in Israel. It was almost wiped out at this point. It wasn't very big, and it wasn't very significant. It didn't have a lot of prestige. It didn't have a lot of power or glamour to it. But he sends them to the tribe of Benjamin. And in fact, he sends them to one of the lesser clans of Benjamin. And he hunts out a guy named Saul. And he says, I'm going to make you the king. Now, Saul had a couple of good things going for him. The Bible describes Saul as standing head and shoulders over the crowd. Which means that, given the height of people at that time, he was probably a good 6 foot, maybe 6'5". Right? He was a tall guy. And the Bible describes him as he was very handsome. Which are two good qualities if you're going to be king, right? You want to stand out a little bit, look good, and those kind of things. But Saul had some problems too. If you look in 1 Samuel chapter 9, when Samuel goes to King Saul, and he says, God's going to anoint you as king, Saul has kind of an odd reaction to it. This is what he says. He says, yeah, but aren't I a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why would you want to do such a thing to me? And on the surface, this kind of sounds like humility. Like, oh, he's a nice, humble guy. He's got some humility there, which is a really good trait in a king. But it turns out it's not really humility. It turns out it's insecurity. And that is not a good trait to have in a leader. See, where on the surface it looks like, yes, he's humble, it's going to be this insecurity in his life that's going to lead to his downfall and make him an ineffective leader. So how insecure was Paul? I mean, how insecure was Saul? How insecure was he? How insecure was Saul? Well, let's put it this way. Samuel first tells him, I'm going to make you king, so here's what we got to do. We're going to get all the tribes together. Right? We'll have them all send out their leadership and all that kind of thing. And then we'll go through this confirmation process. Okay? And so, here's all the tribes. Everybody's there. Samuel stands up and says, we're going to choose your king. And they kind of go through this confirmation process. He's like,